Welcome to our next edition of the EC Life Sofa segment. We're coming to you today from the Wynn Studio here in the Chamber office, and I want to recognize our Paragon sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Today I get the lovely opportunity of interviewing Benny Anderson with Visit Eau Claire and talk about something probably a lot of people don't realize that this area is now becoming famous for is the wedding industry. Tell us a little bit about, we're coming out of COVID. Tourism has always been a big component of this area. What does the wedding piece play into it, and where did that come from?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'm well spoken on, how weddings happen and, that whole thing, Dave, but, weddings have always been a big part of our tourism industry in general, but especially here in Eau Claire. We've got some lovely facilities. We've got a great area, whether you're looking for that classic wedding, like the traditional, Florian Gardens, or, the beautiful churches that we have, or, the outdoor facilities that have come alive with, like Haymarket Plaza and Phoenix Park and a lot of those different places that the city have built up. And then all of the barn places that are, just really, we're crazy before COVID. But then even you have some really cool, like, high class facilities that are coming up with, the Confluence Center is now doing some big weddings, and you can go, everywhere from Confluence to Country Fest, where there a lot of weddings happen, evidently. So it's just it's always been a big part of tourism, but especially coming out of COVID, it's a great piece of tourism because people are getting that chance to bring their families together or start their lives, or really just piece together the dreams and hopes that kind of had to be paused for a minute during the pandemic.
So you kind of, as you just went through it, as you said, there's really the whole gamut of what somebody could have here. That has really changed within the wedding, I guess, industry itself, from the traditional church, you got married in your town, to this destination. And, when we first started talking about doing this as a story, one of the things that I've watched over the years is like now Nashville has become like the bachelorette capital of the world, where for years, the gentlemen seem to go to Vegas. Now, Eau Claire is kind of becoming that identity of, again, that destination of having all these choices, but really more importantly, the impact they make on this area. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like when you look at the impact that they're having, a lot of it starts with, just how we're positioned in the state and the region for being a bigger city with a lot of, more rural entities around us. So when somebody's looking for the amenities that you need to host a wedding, room blocks and facilities and caterer, it's natural that a lot of them are coming, here. And then you have all of these beautiful facilities, that you can go do every part of that. We get a lot of bachelorette parties at, the golf courses or at the breweries or, hotels, where they'll rent a suite or do those kind of things. But the financial impact behind that is great, for Eau Claire and the surrounding area. You've got, the typical room block is at least 10 rooms, for a 2-night stay, with family and all of it. But a lot of times you have, 50 to sometimes the whole hotels. And then you have a lot of the auxiliary events, the rehearsal dinners and, the gift openings and, family reunions afterwards, where when you're putting a lot of these families together and they're all going to be in town, a lot of times they'll take an extra activity or hang out for a little while longer and, celebrate grandma's birthday or, whatever they're going to do. So it ends up being a pretty strong financial impact, but it also gives them really strong memories of the area, right? When you get married here, then, you're going to come back for your first anniversary or your 5th anniversary to show your kids and your grandkids, this is where we were. And it really gives them a strong connection to, our area.
So again, when most people look at tourism and they don't maybe understand it or it's not in their blood or whatever, as I would say, maybe it's in yours, they look at the summer season as, I can't get in my favorite restaurant, or why am I paying this much for a hotel room when Uncle Bob comes to town or whatever. But again, coming out of COVID, this diversification within tourism, I think, is today being better defined than ever before. And certainly, again, the wedding industry, but how do you look at tourism and the different roles the different segments play?
The first thing that we always look at in that world is, that you live here, right? So well, a lot of time, and this got butchered in a quote recently in the media where I was like, oh God, that is not how I said that, but okay. Thank you. Yeah, if we could, yeah, right. But basically, the way that we look at it is that we're using, tourists' money and that tax implication to build the city and the amenities that we want. So in reality, yeah, there are some busy seasons, where you're not going to get into, our restaurant maybe as quick as you were, but in reality, when you compare that wait and the balance of it, versus like the cities, if you wait for 30 minutes, in the cities, I mean, you had a good night, you wait 30 minutes here in Eau Claire and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is horrible, right? But I mean, like, same thing with traffic and all of those different things. So we really look at as using, that growth and part of the economy to drive making it better for our residents. So when you look at things like the parks and the sculpture tours and all the different amenities that we have as a slightly smaller community at the scale that we do, it really works, for the people living here. But also as you're seeing tourism and that diversification grow across all of the different platforms, from even how you get married, right? Like, I mean, it started in the barns and now we're back, right? The facilities, all these things, you're seeing even like how people travel in general, very differently, whether it's the traditional hotel or the Airbnb or, a camper or, tent or whatever it's going to be, like you're seeing like that growth and really the expansion of the economy and how we use that to build the amazing things that we have. I mean, we're one of the fastest growing areas in the state, right. And we have many big cities that are very jealous of how we're doing that, but we also still maintain the responsibility of growing it appropriately so that we don't change that way of a way of life, outside of a couple, festival weekends and things like that, so.
But, to kind of take a sidebar of this, one of the things, again, I don't think a lot of people see from tourism is, again, you're bringing people here to celebrate a wedding, anniversary, all these other things. They see this wonderful community we have, this region, and that's the part I've always said you can't gauge of how many more times do they come back? Or do they decide to say to themselves, you know what, I wouldn't mind living there.
Yeah. And I mean, even, I've been in tourism, for 20, 25 years, across the different spectrums and never really quite understood the full impact of that role for like talent attraction to the area until you start looking at people's stories of how they got here, myself even, I mean, I think talent attraction starts at the university and colleges on a big level because that's how I got here. I came to school to take a job in tourism here and picked my college for that. And ended up staying here because I loved the area. Right. We talked to so many people that they're like, I came here and I just loved it. It's and especially when you look at where people are coming from right now, the big cities, right? And they're escaping all of those, struggles of the big city and traffic. And now that they don't have to necessarily work in the office or, they want different schools or whatever. And they come here and they see who we are and how we do things. And it really gives them it's the strongest advertisement of immersing themselves in our area.
So as we were getting ready and Chelsea was getting set up in here, you and I talked a little bit about also, you don't represent just Eau Claire. You have branched out, other groups have come to you to, what other areas are you doing? But from a tourism standpoint, similar to the Chamber in some way, but definitely more tourism, the outside world, they don't see the borders.
Right. Yeah. So we have Eau Claire, we have Altoona, we have Osseo, we have Union, and then Menominee and Chippewa have their own DMOs who we have strong friendships with and have a lot of things that we get to partner on. But we tend to work with that that traditional Chippewa Valley region, and like you said, even when we use the term Chippewa Valley outside of here, you always ask that question: what is the Chippewa Valley? And right. First time you asked me, I was like, I don't know, like. My house, I don't, right? And so, now we really look at it as that regional approach of what would people, realistically go to and do. And even though it falls under that Visit Eau Claire contracting and brand, we really look at each city, as, what are they individually and why is Eau Claire different than Altoona or Osseo and Union? And when you look at those amenities and even how those towns have built up themselves, they're very different brands and identities and even sometimes travelers, and it's just a really cool approach to have, the unique events of Altoona and, then that straight up, small town feel of Osseo and and all that, and then Union's Parks, on top of the crazy scene that Eau Claire has built in art and food and culture. I mean, it all just works together. You don't have those one facet tourists like we used to think. Yep. Like people want to go and see a little bit of everything. And once we flip that on its head a little bit for marketing, especially during COVID, to say, hey, listen, we're going to give you everything you want and be able to do that, people have really just eaten it up.
Well, and I think, again, in today's world, with families, everything, they're all looking for so much that's different. Yeah. And again, as you just said, we really do offer a little bit of everything. So as we close this out, let me take this another route real quickly. What are we missing from the tourism industry? What would you think, or what would you like to see developed here in Eau Claire, the Chippewa Valley, to add to that industry?
Yeah, we've got a strong footing. I mean, the obvious answer is clearly the convention center. That it would be nice to be able to have that facility for people to come in and return that business guests, faster. That's where we're struggling a little bit, from that level. We were struggling prior to COVID, but it actually insulated us during COVID because we weren't relying on it. We didn't have our infrastructure built around it. But it would be a really great time to get in front of that. From some of the sports facilities, we've got Sonante coming up, but we look at ice a lot and talk about how great that is needed. But then also it's just really keeping a lot of our entities that we've been working with in so long and finding new ways to support them. One of the things that we talked about recently, like for an example, would be the Silver Mine ski jump, right? 140 some year old event, the only organization I've worked with that have lived through 2 pandemics, and could be like, it has Olympic level qualifying, judges and skiers coming out of this event, and is also, very old and needs a little bit of help. Could actually have summer events if we reconfigured it. So a lot of times it's just taking things that we're already doing well and building them on top of, also going and building out the new shiny, objects. I mean, like a convention center would be lovely. Getting the sculpture tour to be, more involved across all of our cities is one of our big goals. And then, just a little bit more of, everything else that we have, that dining scene, working with some of the areas that, as downtown has come back alive, identifying the next thing to say, okay, what's the next place that we need to reinvest in? Sure. So we don't let it get too far down. But all in all, we're pretty lucky and pretty happy with what we get to represent and work with. So, I mean, I have a wish list, but not a, oh my God, we're going to die if we don't get it, right?
Well, I certainly, on behalf of the Chamber, want to say congratulations. I mean, again, you took over 2 days before the world was shut down a couple of years ago, and what you have done and your team has done over the last couple of years to really propel the tourism industry, which, again, a lot of people don't realize the impact it has, but congratulations, and I just look forward to all the things we'll do in the future.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm incredibly lucky to have an amazing team and board and partners, but especially, partners like you in the Chamber and your staff here, just absolutely instrumental in not only our recovery, but the recovery of our community, and glad to have you as partners and friends.
It's a team effort, that's for sure. So, but I want to thank folks. Stay tuned for our next pieces of this edition of the EC Life. And I certainly want to thank our friends over at Atmosphere Commercial Interiors for the beautiful set we have here today. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few seconds. Welcome back to our next segment of this edition of the EC Life Sofa segment. And we are very happy to welcome to our studio here in the Wynn Studio Room. And again, want to recognize our Paragon sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Today we get an opportunity to speak with Lindsay from the local store, who is the manager, and you've been that since 2014.
Yes.
But yet you've been with Volume 1 on and off for a little over 10, 11 years.
Yeah, this will be my 10th year with the organization.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the background. What is this? What is the local store? Because it's more than just a store.
Yeah, so the local store is really an extension of Volume 1. So when Volume 1 started, we had a small office space, and we're looking to kind of showcase a lot of the local things we were writing about, local books, local music. We also had a great design team that obviously had a sense of local pride just with the type of work that we're doing. So the concept to just kind of like sell some of that local pride merchandise came early when our offices were still over on Barstow Street. And we started to do some of that out of our old office front, just kind of sell like, I Love Eau Claire t-shirts and some of the local books of music that we were writing about in the magazine and things like that. And then when we moved to our new building on Dewey Street in 2012, that really gave us the opportunity to grow the concept of the store as in the footprint that it is today. So the first floor of the building is the local store, and the second floor of the building is the offices for Volume 1. So we're still the same entity. We work obviously super closely together, but that's kind of the concept of the store and where it started. And to just really, evoke a sense of pride in the community that we, feel so passionate about. So.
But when I say you, all of you over there, really if you haven't been there,
Yeah.
explain a little bit. It's more than just a local store.
Right.
It's more than just saying the words supporting local. You guys really, it is product from our region, from our state.
Mm-hmm.
So you really do support that true support local.
Right, yeah. So we work with a ton of local vendors, regional vendors, Wisconsin vendors. So we do things such as product pitch day. We invite people to come in and show us the things that they make and offer, to sell some of them in the shop. A lot of our glassware, pottery, jewelry is all made by local people. We have a large food and pantry section, local cheese, meat, snacks, things like that. Yeah. And we've developed a strong relationship with a lot of local businesses as well that use us to put together, gift baskets, welcome baskets, client baskets, things like that, that showcase all that local product. So, and a lot of our products are designed by our in-house design team, and then we'll get them printed at local print shops. So it really is not only supporting just the store in Volume 1, but it's also extending out, the whole ripple effect of supporting the whole community. So, the people that make that product or the place where that is printed, it really echoes throughout the community.
What are some of the most, let's say, unique gifts that you have found so far?
That's a good question. A lot of our woodworkers and potters and things like that, they give full creative freedom to make whatever they want. Sure. It's rare that we actually commission something special for them to make. So a lot of times it's stuff that is brought to us. One of my favorite things in the store is we work with Tim Brodnicki from Tree Purpose and Eau Claire Woodworks, and he uses local wood from the Tree Purpose is a group of woodworkers that use urban wood from the city, trees that need to be torn down for different projects. So they use that wood to create products that then we sell in the store. So it's like start to finish, it's things that came from this place. Sure. So he makes these live edge cribbage boards from local walnut wood and other things like that. So that's one of my favorite things that we sell. I just think it's so neat that it comes start to finish from here. So there's a lot of different things like that. And then even Marika Gouda, she's a little bit outside of town, but huge, world-renowned cheesemaker. And it's just so neat to be able to work directly with the people that will come to the store and drop off the things. Another one is Hiker's Brew. It's a coffee brand in town. So the people that started that, they're UWEC alumni. They roast all their beans right in town. They drop product off directly. They're actually a feature spot for RCU's commercial because they use their services. Yeah, so it's things like that are just kind of full circle. You get to see the process start to finish. I just think those are the things that are kind of my favorite things to tell stories about.
And I think that's, again, for people who maybe never been in the store, that even if at least the first time, to go in and realize the depth of what you have.
Right.
So again, and how often would you say you are I don't know what the phrase would be, turning over inventory, like
Yeah.
new stuff coming in, because I think it's one of those things when you go shopping, okay, we kind of did that, done that. I don't think that fits you guys.
Right. We get new things in all the time. We always like to hang on to those, those staple items, cribbage boards, things like that we've had for a long time. People expect to be there. Some of our, we have a candy brand that commemorates the history of the building. It was actually built to be a chocolate factory in the late 1800s. So we have an in-house candy brand called the Dewey Street Candy Company that we work with local vendors that produce the candy, but we do all the branding for the packaging that tells the story about the building and things like that. So we keep some of those staples around, but I'd say every week we're getting brand new things in and rearranging, trying to get this here, this there. And we're always open to that. I get emails and calls and people dropping in every day with something new. I make this jewelry, or I make this, I'm a potter, I work at a Banbury place. So, I think every week there's something new. And we do things in small batches. So we might get this set of items from this woodworker one week, and then they might bring something different the next week. And so I feel like every time you come in, there's something new to see.
So you kind of touch on it, but if you are a local artist, you don't have to produce 10,000 pieces.
No.
I mean, you again are looking for more of the unique, innovative things than the mass produced.
Right. And it's never, especially, I keep going back to the potters and the woodworkers, but especially the people like that do hands-on thing, it's always going to be a different version. Even if it's, they make bowls, they're always going to be unique. Yeah. Yeah. So telling those stories and, highlighting those items and being able to always have new things in is really special, I think, especially for gifts,
So what if you were to say, we're missing X, what would that be? What is not that you haven't been able to find yet, maybe that somebody out there could say, I could do that?
That's a good question. We've expanded so much throughout the years, and I think it was easier for us to find, sections of things that we were missing. So, we've expanded probably 3 different times since I've been there, which has been some really fun projects. But we were like, I think it's funny, actually. I had this kid come in one time, and he was from out of state. He was maybe 10 years old with his dad, and he was like, what is this store? And I was like, oh, we sell Wisconsin things. And so he says, well, you have beer and cheese? Because that's what he knows about Wisconsin. And at the time, I said, we don't have beer or cheese because we had nothing. We didn't have that section developed yet. So it was like, and I knew that we had planned on it at some point when we get there, but there's licensing and equipment and all that. So it's like, there's things like that are just like, oh my gosh, So now we have, local beer and wine and spirits. We have a cooler with local cheeses. In the spring and the summer, we open our patio space to have garden things, wind chimes, birdhouses, all that kind of stuff. So the last thing that I added, which is very personal to me because I love my dog, is our pet section. That was the last thing. But other than that, it's like at this point, we've developed a lot of sections that we've been kind of planning and dreaming throughout the years. So there's some things that would be really cool to showcase, more like antique or local history items that are kind of one-offs, as opposed to a line of products. So that kind of thing we still think about a lot, and we're always kind of working and developing. But as far as big types of items, we have games and puzzles, we have kids stuff, we have apparel, we have food. So we've kind of gone through our big list of dream sections, but there's so much room for that growth within.
Nick put together one of his, you guys did the Christmas crate of all the different beers. So, but I think again, for people to understand, when you say, again, you have beer and cheese, it's not probably what most people think of the variety. And again, the whole micro beer market has taken off over the last 10 years it's nuts. But so that was when I saw that, I have a board member who very much into micro brew and absolutely loves it.
Yep.
Still working his way through it. But
Yeah.
I think that's what I enjoy about going to the store is it really is unique things that if you want to find something that's not per se anywhere else, that's where you go.
Yeah, and that's fun when customers come in. We always say, can I help you find anything? You looking for anything special? A lot of times they're like, I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it, and that's why I'm here, because I'm just gonna wander around, and it's a good spot to find, that person that's hard to shop for, that person that really doesn't need anything else. It's like you find something really unique that speaks to them.
Again, having done that several times, what I like about it, like you said, some of the product, there's different blemishes, not in a negative way, but about that. So again, it's not a mass-produced 10,000, from someplace.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really fun to work with the makers and kind of see what they come up with. And it's a very collaborative process between, me, Nick, the design team, other input, ideas that other people have in the community, customer requests. So it's a fun process to kind of build and grow.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. As we're getting ready here, you came to Eau Claire to
Yes.
go to school. Talk a little bit about how you transitioned from school to Volume 1.
Yeah, so I moved here from Milwaukee area to go to school back in 2008, and I was slightly familiar with Eau Claire, but not super familiar. So came here to go to school, ended up actually connecting with Volume 1 pretty early in my time here because not knowing a lot about the community, you find it all kinds of places, and it tells you what to do and where to go and how to learn about the community. So it was a huge resource for me just organically before I was personally involved. And when I saw that they offered internships, I kind of jumped on that. I actually still have in my bulletin board in my office, Nick printed out my first email I sent to him when I was 20 and pinned it up on my bulletin board. And it's very cute because it's not super well written, but I'm like, I love Volume 1. I love going to the concert series, and
Got you in the door.
yeah, so I connected with just the whole concept of the organization and everything and its connection to the community really early. So I started interning through my interest in writing and journalism, and again, just through writing those stories about, here's a concept, here's a business, here's a person that we're going to write about. Go learn about it. So learned a lot that way. And then when I was looking for a part-time job at the end of my school, I started working at the shop, and same thing, connected with all the makers and the stories, and then ended up working full-time. And not just through work in Volume 1, but just the whole community in general of existing in this place. It's home to me now. I love it. It's grown a lot and changed, but only for the better.
It leads me then to my somewhat of my final question, and that is, why have you stayed? As we look at workforce being a huge issue, what's kept you here?
I think that there's so much appeal to living in this place. It's not only, you have all the big city amenities as far as entertainment. I love our downtown. It's walkable. It's gorgeous. You have access to the rivers and hiking trails and all sorts of, nature-focused activities. But you also have, like I said, the big city amenities as far as entertainment, shows, music. There's a huge art scene here. I love participating in that, going to galleries and live music and theater performances. I just feel like there's always something going on. The food scene's grown a lot, which I'm really into. So yeah, right. So I've loved, exploring new restaurants and trying new things. And just the whole sense of community here. I feel like even people that have lived here their whole lives that leave, I feel like there's always this draw to come back. There's just something special about it here. And it's one of those things that's hard to put your finger on. You can say the cost of living, the music and the arts, the food, the scenery, but it's there's some intangible thing here that just draws people in.
I call it the magic.
Yeah, and it's just some feeling that you get when you're here. So, I have a sister in New York, I have family in Milwaukee, and they love visiting here too, and I think that they feel that when they're here and understand why I've chosen to call this place home.
It's kind of why we say it's God's country.
Yeah.
So last question, future for the local store. What's next? You've, again, all of you over there really created a beautiful niche to this community. Are there plans for the future, or what's the next piece?
There are some big plans for the future that I can't necessarily get into right now, but growth. We are constantly looking to. We don't want to stagnate or get stale. We're constantly looking for new products, new people to work with, new concepts to present to the store, and trying to figure out what is wanted, what the community is looking for. So we've done a lot of different things throughout the years that we. Like the night market, different vendor markets, tasting events, different things like that. So we've gotten really creative with the footprint that we have to work with and the space that we have as far as like expansion, remodeling. So there's always ideas like that for, you know, new displays, new products, new relationships. So I think just continue to grow and expand and change and with the community and continue to offer what they're looking for.
Well, when you're ready to break the news of what those other things are, let us know. We'll be glad to help you tell the world all about that. So again, so that is this edition of the EC Life Sofa segment. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get our third interview, but if you want to read the spotlight story of Riverside Bike and Skate, pick up your latest edition, or winter edition of the EC Life. It's all in there, and you can read about the wonderful things they're doing. Again, want to thank our guest here today, and as well as our set designed by Atmosphere Commercial Interiors, and of course our Paragon sponsor, Royal Credit Union, and coming to you from the Wynn studio here at the Chamber office. So we hope you're enjoying this series. We'll be looking forward to this summer when the next edition comes out. Until then, have a great time, Eau Claire.